the last stuff is different ways to sample. Okay, so a census is not really a sampling technique. Census is when it happens every 10 years. It is when you get info from your entire population. In this case, you've actually found your parameter because you've talked to everyone. In theory, if you can do a census. The reason censuses are not done very often, it's very hard to talk to your entire population, especially if they're people. Your population is always changing. If you're doing an opinion poll and you try to talk to everybody, perhaps opinions have changed in the course of the poll, in the course of you taking the poll. Some people are just hard to find in the terms or in the sense of the US Census. People that are homeless are hard to contact. People living in a motel without an address, it's hard to send them a form. So that's what a census is. Another sampling technique that's not so random is a voluntary response sample. It is also like it sounds. There's something voluntary. There's volunteers involved. So a voluntary response sample, you or people, they are volunteering their opinion. So that means you're choosing to be part of the sample. There's no randomness there. This is not the best way to go. But that's what a voluntary response sample is. You're choosing to be part of the sample. Okay, another sampling technique is called a simple random sample. This is sometimes abbreviated SRS. This is the easiest, most basic way to sample and usually the best. So how a simple random sample works, every object in your population gets a number. So number everyone, or use everybody's name, or use everybody's ID number. Put everybody's name or number in a hat. On the AP test, they really look for the key of mixing up the numbers. You don't want the people who are last entered into the hat to be more likely to be drawn than the ones at the bottom of the hat. So it's kind of key to mix up the numbers. I know that seems a little ridiculous. And then finally, you are supposed to randomly select numbers or names or slips of paper from the hat. All right, so that's a simple random sample. Another sampling technique is called systematic. This is when typically you have lists of some kind. You randomly choose a starting point, and then from that point on, you select every 5th or 10th or 100th object from that randomly selected starting point. So there's a system to the way you are selecting your sample. So that's called systematic. Another technique is a convenience sample. This is also kind of like it sounds. You are choosing people or objects to be in your sample that are convenient. They're convenient to get data from. They're convenient to talk to. They're easy to find. They're your friends in class. They're the fish that are easy to catch in a lake. So that would be a convenient sample. We have 3 left. This one, stratified, if you're into science, there's different layers to our atmosphere, stratosphere, troposphere, I don't know. But strata is part of this word, and strata are different layers. So how a stratified sample works is you break your population into groups. Everyone in a group has some common trait. So in the example that you see here, if I'm breaking down my high school population by grade level, I've got 9th graders, I've got 10th graders, 11th and 12th. That would be 4 different strata, 4 different groups. To make sure everybody is represented, I then randomly select some people from each group. Then I can make sure that my sample does indeed contain some of each grade level. You could also break populations down by gender, by how you get to school, whatever you think is important. If you think indeed there's a variable that's important and you want to make sure it's represented in your sample. So that is stratified. Another one that looks similar is called a cluster sample. Okay, so cluster sample, though, is a little bit different. You're still breaking things down into groups that are called clusters this time. So if you look at my 4 groups this time, they all look the same. I think this was supposed to be like humanities, life science, or something. So say you're going to, I don't know, but they all have these letters. So this group is kind of the same as this group, is kind of the same as this group, is kind of the same as this group. So rather than taking some from each, like we did with stratified, cluster is you randomly decide which of these groups you are going to talk to, and then you talk to everyone in that group. So your population is supposed to have H and LS in it. And in this way, if this is a mixed up group with H and LS, and so is this, and so is this, and so is this, we're going to randomly take 2 of those groups. They're our sample. And then finally, we've got multi-stage. This is when you've got, it's like it sounds. So there's lots of stages to your sample. Sometimes you're using different strategies at each stage. So maybe you've done a simple random sample. That wouldn't work, excuse me. So perhaps you did a stratified sample. I'm just going to stop talking. It's late. So how does a multi-stage work? Okay, so maybe you randomly select a grade level at the high school, and then with that grade level, you randomly select 2 English classes of that grade level. So 2 English classes of 12th graders. I don't know. And then, so like Shad and Maeda. And then you decide, okay, I'm going to talk to Shad's 5th period and Maeda's 2nd. That's your sample. So it's kind of like a funnel, and lots of things happen to randomly get those people. All right, I hope this has been helpful. If not, I'm sure you're going to let me know. Again, these words are on page 270 through 279 in your textbook. Thanks.